Hello and welcome back to Thrive in Mathematics, work through week 2 GCSE Maths practice. I'm Dr. Liz Ione. Today we're tackling quadratic factorization for the higher tier paper. You will learn how to factorize quadratics, including cases where the coefficient of x squared is greater than 1. Work along with me and pause the video before each solution if you'd like to try it first. Grab your pen and paper and let's go. Question 1. Factorize x squared plus 9x plus 14. I tend to use the T here to say two numbers that you multiply together to give you positive 14. And those two numbers, when you add them together, it should give you positive 9. Let's think about two numbers. 14. This is my side calculation. 1 times 14 is 14. 2 times 7 is 14. And those are the pair factors of 14. Now, let's eliminate 1 and 14. If I add them together, I get 15. When I subtract, I'll get 13. So there's no way I would get positive 9. 2 and 7, when I add them together, I would get 9. So we pick this. You open two sets of brackets. X goes in here and X goes in here. X times X is X squared when you're expanding. Pick the positive 2 and you pick the positive 7. Now you have factorized that quadratic expression. Question 2. Factorize x squared minus 5x plus 6. Think of two numbers that when you multiply together, I use the T to say times together. It gives you 6, positive 6. And when you add those two numbers together, you should get negative 5, 6. 1 times 6 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. And those are the pair factors of 6. Now let's eliminate. 1 and 6, when added together, gives us 7. When we subtract one from the other, we would get either 1 minus 6, which is minus 5, yes. But if I have a minus here, then that means I would have 1 times negative 6. It doesn't give us positive 6. So it cannot be 1 and 6, because if we pick 1 and 6, then one of those numbers must be a negative number, so that when we add it together, we get negative 5. Let's look at the second pair factors, 2 and 3. If I add 2 and 3, I would get positive 5, but this says negative 5. What can I do to just change this slightly? Well, if I introduce minus 2 plus minus 3 will give me minus 5, and minus 2 times minus 3 gives me positive 6. So we are going to pick this. Open two sets of brackets again, because we're dealing with quadratic. X goes in here first, and then you take the minus 2, you take the minus 3. And that's it. Question 3. Factorize 3x squared plus 8x plus 4. In this case, unlike the previous two questions, before the x squared here, there is a 1 there, even though we don't write it. In this case, there is a 3 here. When there is a 1 before the x squared, the factorization is straightforward. But if you have a different number other than 1, then you need to introduce an extra step. The first step at all, when a is not equal to 1, is you take the coefficient of x squared and you take the last number and you multiply them together. So you have 3 times 4, which is 12. Then the next thing is to do what we did in the previous step, which is think of two numbers that when you multiply together, so this would be your T now, and this would be your A. When you times those two numbers together, you will get positive 12. But when you add those two numbers together, you get positive 8. Let's do workout. 12. 1 times 12 is 12. 2 times 6 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 3 is 12. And that's it. So we've exhausted all the factors of 12. Now let's eliminate. 1 and 12, if I add them together, I would not get 8. 2 and 6, there's a possibility there. But before we choose this, let's just look at the last one. 3 and 4, there is no way I would get 8. So it has to be this. 2 plus 6 is 8. The next thing we've got to do is don't open two sets of brackets like we did in the previous one, not just yet. You're going to rewrite this expression where the middle term is now written as 2x plus 6x, because that gives 8x. You have 3x squared plus 2x plus 6x plus 4. Now we're going to introduce brackets around this expression. You're going to put a bracket there, and you're going to put a bracket here. You need to factorize each bracket. Here, x comes out, and you have 3x plus 2. In the second bracket, 2 is the highest common factor, so positive 2, and then you have 3 2x plus 2. At this point, the brackets that are created must be exactly the same. If they are not, you've made a mistake somewhere. Next thing is to take one of those brackets and then take the ones that are outside the bracket and put them in the bracket. So x plus 2. And this is the final answer. That is how you factorize quadratic expression where a is not equal to 1. Let's try another one. Factorize 4x squared minus 12x plus 9. You take the coefficient of x squared and you multiply it by the last term. So it's 4 times 9, which is 36. Now this is your t and this is your a. Let's think of the pair factors of 36 that when we add them together, we get negative 12. I'm going to start with 36. 1 times 36 is 36. 2 times 18 is 36. 3 times 12 is 36. 4 times 9 is 36. There's no 5. 6 times 6 is 36. No 7. 8, no. 9 times 4, but we already have it, 9 and 4. So that means we stop there. These are all the pair factors of 36. Now, let's try to eliminate 1 and 36. If I add it together or subtract one from the other, I would never get negative 12. Cross that off. 2 and 18, no. 3 and 12, cross off. 4 and 9, I will get 13 or 5. 6 and 6, I will get 12, but that is going to give me a positive 12. How can I tweak it slightly so that I will get negative 12, and when I multiply them, I will still have positive 36? It's by introducing minus in front of those numbers. So negative 6 add negative 6 gives negative 12. Negative 6 times negative 6 gives positive 36. As usual, because this is not equal to 1, we cannot just open two sets of brackets. We need to rewrite this as 4x squared minus 6x plus 9. Add brackets around and factorize each bracket. Here I would have 2x, open bracket 2x minus 3. And on the second bracket, we would have minus 3, open bracket 2x minus 3. Now take one of the identical brackets and write it out, 2x minus 3. And take the bits that are not inside brackets and enclose in brackets, 2x minus 3. Since they are exactly the same, you can just write them as 2x minus 3 squared. And that's it. Question 5. Factorize 6x squared plus 5x minus 4. Step 1. Take the coefficient of x squared and multiply it by negative 4. 6 times negative 4, which is negative 24. We need to think about two numbers that when we multiply together, we get negative 24, and when we add them together, we get positive 5. Let's start with positive 24, and then we would add the negative sign after 24. So we have 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6, 6 times 4. But here we have already done 6 times 4, which is 4 times 6. So we stop. These are the pair factors of 24. Now, one of these numbers must have a negative in front of it because we need negative 24. So let's see. But before we do that, let's just think about which numbers, when added together, we give 5. And then we'll think about how we introduce the minus sign. So 1 and 24, I would never get 5 if I add or subtract. 2 and 12, no, I wouldn't get 5. 3 and 8, there is a possibility of getting a 5 because I can do 8 minus 3, and that's 5. But before I pick that, let's just look at the last one. 4 and 6. If I add, I get 10. When I subtract, I would get 2. So it can't be the last one. It has to be this pair factors. So 8 minus 3 would give me 5. If I put minus here now, I would get positive 5 when I do 8 minus 3. And I will also get negative 24 when I multiply 8 by negative 3. So this is what I'm going to be working with. Now, let's rewrite this expression as 6x squared minus 3x plus 8x minus 4. Minus 3x plus 8x is this positive 5x. And closing brackets, factorize each bracket. So we have 3x, open bracket 2x minus 1 plus 4, open bracket 2x minus 1. Take one of the bracket 2x minus 1 and then enclose the ones outside the bracket in a bracket 3x plus 4. And that is it. Question 6. Solve x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. In this case, because it requires us to solve for x, that means we need to find the value of x. Think about two numbers that when we multiply together, we get positive 6, and when we add, we get positive 5. 6. 1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 3 is 6. How would I get 5? If I subtract one from the other, I would get 5, but that means I would need to have one of this number having a minus in it. When I multiply with one having a minus, I'll get minus 6. So that would not work. The next one, 2 add 3 is 5 and 2 times 3 is 6. So this works. Open two sets of brackets, put your x in there, and 2, take your positive 3. So far, we have factorized the left-hand side of this equation. Now, make it equal to 0. What this means is that multiplying must give you 0. Whatever is in this bracket must give 0. So it's either this is 0 or this is 0 or both are 0 because 0 times 0 gives 0. The way to work this is you say x plus 2 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0. But if x plus 2 equals 0, we subtract 2 from both sides. You would get x equals 0 minus 2 is minus 2. Or you subtract 3 from both so that this turns to 0. And you would have x equals 0 minus 3 is minus 3. This is what it means to solve for x. If you substitute x equals negative 2 into this equation, it would give you 0. Same thing, if you substitute negative 3 into here, you will get 0. Question 7. Solve 2x squared plus 7x plus 3 equals 0. Similar to what we did before, when your coefficient of x squared is not 1. We have to do the very first step, which is you take the coefficient of x squared and multiply it by the 3. RT is this. Think of two numbers that when you multiply together, you get 6. 1 times 6, 2 times 3. Is there any way I add 2 and 3 and I would get 7? No. No, don't add 6 is 7 and 1 times 6 is 6. So we pick this. Now let's rewrite this. It becomes 2x squared plus 1x. Of course, you can write this just as x. I put it here to emphasize where the 1 has come from. Plus 6x plus 3 equals 0. In closing brackets, and we have x on the outside. We've got 2x plus 1 plus 3, 2x plus 1 equals 0. That means 2x plus 1 times x plus 3 equals 0. We've just picked one of the identical brackets and then we've enclosed the bit on the outside inside the bracket. So x plus 3 equals 0 equals 0. Now, it means that or this is 0 or both are 0 so that when you multiply them, you get 0. So it's either 2x plus 1 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0. If 2x plus 1 equals 0, you subtract 1 from both sides so that is 0. And you have 2x equals minus 1. 0 minus 1 is minus 1. And then we divide both sides by 2. And that means we have x equals negative 1 divided by 2. Or we subtract 3 from both sides and we would have x equals 0 minus 3 is minus 3. And that's it. Question 8. Factorize and solve 5x squared minus 13x plus 6 equals 0. Since our coefficient of x squared is not equal to 1, we need to do that first step. Step 1. 5 times 6, which is 30. Now let's think of pair factors of 30. 30, 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, there's no 4. 5 times 6 is 30. 6 times 5, well, we already have it, so we stop. Now, let's eliminate. Is there any way when I add 1 onto 30 or subtract 1 from the other, I get 13? No. 2 and 15? Yes, there is a possibility. If I subtract 2 from 15, I get positive 13. Let's pull the minus here. 2 plus minus 15 is the same as 2 minus 15. Oh, yes, I'll get minus 13, but hang on. 2 times negative 15 will not give me positive 30. It's so close, but it's not the right one. So I can't use negative there. I can't put a negative there. 3 and 10. 3 times 10 is 30. if I put a minus here and a minus here, minus 3 plus minus 10 is minus 13, and minus 3 times minus 10 is positive 30. This is the right one to pick. The last one doesn't work anyway. So we've got to rewrite this again as 5x squared minus 3x minus 10x plus 6 equals 0. The next thing to do is to enclose in brackets and factorize each bracket. So I can take out x here so that I have 5x minus 3, and here highest common factor is 2, so I can subtract 2 on the outside. I can bring the minus 2 on the outside of the bracket, and I would have 5x minus 3. Minus 2 times minus 3 is positive 6 equals 0. And as before, we would have 5x minus 3 and then x minus 2 equals 0. So it's either this to 0 or this is equal to 0, or both are 0, so that when we multiply them we get 0. 5x minus 3 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. And then add 3 onto here, add 3 here, we have 5x equals 0 plus 3 is 3. And divide both sides by 5, so that we have x equals 3 divided by 5. Or here is just add 2 here. That means we have x equals 2. So these are the values x can take such that this equation is satisfied. And that's it. Fantastic work. That's a 22 mark up for grabs this week. Comment your score and tell me which question challenged you most. Next time, we'll move on to the next topic. Subscribe. Fantastic. That's 22 marks up for grabs this week. Fantastic work. That's 22 marks up for grabs this week. Comment your score and tell me which question challenged you most. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Keep practicing and keep thriving in mathematics. Bye for now.